Welcome, everyone. I'm Elisabetta. I don't think I need to introduce me a lot during the public. Thank you for joining us at the very first appointment with this new webinar series, which we decided to call Thursday Stroll. So we will keep meeting every Thursday at the same time, alternating a week English and the other week Italian languages. This because the original idea was to organize a set of cultural meetings in our new offices in Vicenza, but due to the obviously to the coronavirus breakout, we had to give up our events. But if we had to give up meeting each other in person, we absolutely could not give up culture, curiosity, and discovery. So we stay at home, but Alda takes you around. And here we are today to learn and to listen about the Persian New Year, the Nowruz, with Shadi Rushabaz. I hope I pronounced well your surname. So Shadi is a young Iranian peace builder, passionate and committed to enhance youth empowerment, leadership, social cohesion, inclusion of refugees and minorities. With an academic background as trainer and facilitator, Shadi leads her own initiative called Peace Mentors in Tehran, focused on local peace education through youth leadership. So since last January, Shadi has been interning at ALDA, and I don't take much longer. Shadi, the floor is yours. I share the screen now.
Thank you so much, Ellie. And I'd like to thank everyone who came and who attended this webinar. I know it's after working hours and you've all had a very long screen time today. So it's really nice and I feel privileged that you're all here. I'd like to thank Antonella and Alda itself for having me for so long and to thank them for keeping me in this extraordinary situation that we're all facing. I've had the privilege of smart working and learning alongside my studies, and I'm about to graduate soon. So I thought today would be a really good opportunity to introduce a very, let's say, underrated holiday that is celebrated by 300 million people around the world, and it's called Nowruz. And I hope that by the end of this presentation and this little chat that we have, we will manage to learn a little bit more about intercultural similarities that exist between all of our cultures, and also to have a little bit of fun. This is a space where I would request all of you to participate and to share your experiences, if you've had any, to share your knowledge or to ask questions. And one thing that I really love to hear is if you have any questions or if you think something is strange. So it's mostly a space of sharing and curiosity, because I know we're all in hundreds of webinars these days where a speaker comes and speaks and we're just like, okay, I have a question, I'll have to send it by email. So it's a very friendly and interactive space. I am going to take you on a virtual cultural tour, and we're going to start with Nowruz, which is my holiday. It's my Persian New Year. Before I enter it, I'm going to recommend a documentary movie, which is called Nowruz Lost and Found. It's by a young Iranian American director called Keyvan Moezzi. So before you ask me for more resources, I put the name on top of the screen there so you can look at it later on. But starting off with Nowruz on the first slide, I'm going to give you a little bit of background information as to what this holiday is. So Nowruz in Farsi, which is my language, it means new day. No means new, and Nowruz means day. So it's a new day, and it's the exact astronomical beginning of the spring. So technically, it's normally on March 21st or March 20th, depending on the leap year. And for us Iranians and for people who celebrate Nowruz, it's a moment of renewal and rebirth because it's spring. And we believe very much in this cycle of life where seasons change and life transforms. It's also a random fact to know that every year Nowruz is at a different hour because you calculate the exact astronomical beginning of the year. So this year it was at 7 a.m. Tehran time. So I was up here at 5 a.m. in Italy on a Skype call with my mom. So it's not like the traditional conventional New Year that you just wait for midnight and then it's done. Geographically speaking and historically speaking, I'm going to give you a little bit more information because if you look at the history of Nowruz, it's been celebrated for thousands of years. It's a Zoroastrian holiday. Zoroastrianism is a small minority right now in Iran, unfortunately, but it's an ancient religion that focuses on good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Among famous Zoroastrian people that you might know, I can name Freddie Mercury, for example, the singer of Queen. And Zoroastrianism focuses a lot on nature and symbolism of fire, of everything around you that you can see and see symbols in. So Nowruz is a Zoroastrian holiday that is integrated now into so many other cultures and holidays. And which countries or which people celebrate Nowruz, we can see in the next slide that a lot of countries have Nowruz in their celebrations. Some of them have Nowruz as an official public holiday. Others just celebrate it in their minority communities. So Afghanistan, Iran, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, India, even in Europe, Albania and Bulgaria. Some people in Georgia do celebrate it. Also, we have a big Iranian community in Georgia who celebrate it. My friends as well there. Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Turkey, and as I said, Canada, the UK, and the US are all hosts to Iranian diaspora and celebrate Nowruz, also other diaspora. So it's interesting to know that regardless of your religion, whether you are a secular country or a Christian country or a Muslim country like Iran, Nowruz is always celebrated. So it's a holiday that in itself is religious but has been integrated into many other states and let's say cultures and nations. Nowruz is not just one day. It's about 2-3 weeks of holiday. And I'm gonna put like my emphasis on three of the most important events that we have in this 2-3 course holiday. But before that, I want to share with you a little quiz. It's not a quiz, it's actually an opinion survey that I think would be interesting as an overview to what you are about to see. So the link to this little event is on your chat box. If you can all see it, feel free to click on it and to open the link in your browser. And you will be seeing 3 statements that you will be rating according to your own interests and your own desire, or let's say willingness to do. I will read the statements. The first one is, I would be willing to jump over a small fire and repeat a traditional verse of poetry in the name of good luck. So if you're willing, you just scroll to your right. If not, you keep it where it is. The second statement is, lettuce, vinegar, and honey might taste good together. It seems a little bit random, like out of the blue, but combination. But just imagine how it would taste like. And the last one is visiting all my family members and having them return my visit over 2 weeks, I think is so much fun. So that's a total of me visiting grandma and then having grandma visit me back. So consider that before you rate the statement. I'm going to give everyone about 2 more minutes to fill this ratings. So for the first question, we have an average of 5.8, which is understandable, jumping over a fire does not seem very safe. And for the second question, we have an average of 5.9, which is also understandable because if I'd heard that this crazy recipe is gonna taste good, I would have my doubts. And on the third question, we have an average of 7.3, which is interesting, especially right now, because I'm sure we really miss our friends and family. And as soon as we're out of the coronavirus restrictions, we would love to go and see our family. Julia is putting on the chat box that she also jumps over small fires at the Scouts. And Antonella says that vinegar and honey are super good. Well, I am very glad to announce that these are the things that we do in our culture in the Nowruz holidays. But how we do it, I'm gonna go through each occasion and you will very quickly spot this, let's say, activity in each stage. So the first one is Çarşamba Suri. So Çarşamba Suri is the last Wednesday Eve of the year for us. And it's absolutely the occasion of jumping over fire, having big parties with your friends and family. So we're starting the transition into let's say, a period of 2 weeks of eating, of seeing everyone that you love, drinking, partying together, and spending time. So as you see, this fire is, as people are also pointing in the chat box, it's not really small. So this is a common sight in most of the streets of at least Tehran. You can see people getting a big fire and some of them are jumping over it. It's dangerous. We have injuries. There are fireworks, which I personally do not really approve of. I am part of the generation who still had time to appreciate these holidays because as we go forward, the social constructs of a society change, and so do how people interact with holidays. So sometimes if you're confined to your backyard and you don't want to make a big fire, you just light a piece of paper on fire and you jump over it. It's a gesture that matters. And in Kurdistan, I know they make super, super big fires, especially the minority communities, Iranians who live there, they make super big fires, which are in essence not really for jumping over. But the point of jumping over this fire is the poem that I have above the screen, which says, "Let your readiness be mine and my paleness yours." So in essence, you tell the fire that you want its heat, its warmth, and its pleasantness to come to you, and your sickness, your paleness, or whatever negative attribute you associate with yourself to be given to fire. Because fire in Zoroastrianism is a symbol of purity, of purification. So as long as you're doing it safely, it's could be potentially a fun activity and a fun tradition. And of course, sometimes it's not that safe. But another fun thing that we used to do as kids, and it might be similar to other holidays, I will let you judge, is the practice of some sort of trick-or-treating. And it's a period where little children in their neighborhood, they go with a bowl and a spoon and they bang the back of that bowl in front of the door. And because people have sweets and candy and things already purchased for the new year, they give them these candies and sweets as gifts for the new year. And in traditional life, it used to be an occasion for poor people to also be able to celebrate this holiday with their community. But then, as I grew up, at least my generation were the generation who did this uh, with friends in little groups of neighbors. And now, of course, we don't really do it anymore. And indeed, you have to be very athletic to jump over the fire. Marta's right. Also, you have to be wearing very comfortable clothes and clothes that you're ready to get rid of. I see a comment about San Martino in Venice from Gigi, and I would be really happy to have him explain a little bit more to us about what San Martino is after we move to the question and answer and discussion section, because one of the objectives of this presentation is to see how culturally close we are to all the holidays in the world. I was explaining this to my boyfriend who's American, and he said it's like Halloween. You go trick or treating, and I was like, yes, I think it's a bit similar. So this is a little bit about Chorsha mystery. There are many, many other traditional things that people used to do, which have faded on the course of time. The next part of this Nowruz holidays that I'm going to talk to you about is Sal Tahvil. But before that, Antonella says her husband says that they were calling March in the same way. Very interesting. So, what is Sal Tahvil? As you can see in this picture, it's a part of the Nowruz holiday that is very well prepared. You need to start preparing for it at least 2 weeks in advance, and you can see the preparations in the slide that Elizabeth just showed. To prepare this beautiful table, you have to go shopping. And this shopping, I swear, is really one of the most amazing experiences. You see people in the street shopping for the exact same things for actually a long time. The table that I showed you is called the Haftseen table. Now, the Haftseen in Farsi means seven and seven, and seen, the letter S. So all the ingredients that you put on that table start with an S, and they all have a different symbolic meaning back to the whole symbolism and Zoroastrianism traditions. In this picture, you actually see more than 7 items, and I'm going to tell you which of these are optional and which of these are traditional. Because like every other tradition, if you celebrate a holiday for over a couple of thousands of years, you have different variations of it. I know that different communities also have, some have Haftshin, which means 7 items that start with an SH. Some have 7 fruits that they put on their table. But the one that at least I have in Iran, and we celebrate every year, is these items. So you put a patch of grass uh, or sprouts. You actually can start growing them yourself a month before, and that's the symbol of rebirth. You put an apple, which is the symbol of beauty. You put sumac. Sumac is a spice, and it's to spice your life and for, exciting and new beginnings in your life. Then you go down to garlic, or we call it seer. These are the mandatory ones. It's for health, it's for safety, and then you put vinegar, serke, which is for patience, and then you make this very, very difficult pudding to make. It was really a challenge for me to make it here, so I didn't even attempt. It's a pudding made of a wheat germ that you have to make over the course of at least a week, and it obviously requires a lot of strength to make it, so it's a symbol of strength. And the last item is senjed, which is the fruit of a lotus tree, and it symbolizes love. So these were the things that you absolutely have to put on your Hafsin table. But then you also have these 5 other options that are not really mandatory, but you can find them. Obviously, coins or seke for money and for prosperity. Then you have the hyacinth flower, which is most beautiful in this season, and it's a representative of spring. And you put a mirror, which is a symbol of self-awareness, of reflection, of light, of introspection. A goldfish, because fish is always a symbol of life and movement in our culture. And we have this very, very fun activity of painting eggs. So it's starting to sound a little bit like Easter, and it's more or less near the same time. But kids paint eggs at school, we paint eggs at home, adults do, and I think it's a fun activity. And of course, they represent fertility. So you put these items all together on your table, and you have seen. And this table sits there for at least a solid 3 weeks, with people coming to see it and with you appreciating it. And the exact moment of Salat Tahvil, the calculation moment of the new year, is the moment where the family is sitting together, they're exchanging hugs and kisses. Some families, they sing verses of poetry, others who are more religious Muslims, they recite the verses of the Quran, and then at the end, there's the new year that comes, and that's when gifts are exchanged, And to me, it's one of the most beautiful moments because you see everyone in their in their own mood, in their own vibes. They're praying, they're wishing for good things, they're reflecting over the year that has passed, they're thinking about what they want for the year that's coming. And it's really one of the things that I really miss most as an immigrant about my culture. But having said this very intense description, I'm going to pass to something much more interesting, which is the food that we eat. And there's a picture of it on the next slide. It's called sabzi polo and mohi. So mohi is fish and sabzi polo is herb rice. It's rice with a lot of saffron and herbs and with normally a specific kind of fish. And yes, it's very delicious. And I unfortunately cannot find the herbs here in Italy, so I really had to substitute with what I had. And the smell of this food, like it's really the smell of New Year. And once you've had this meal, whether for lunch or for dinner, everyone I see their appreciation comments. Yes, I can't find the herbs on Amazon. True, that's the thing that I didn't really look up. Or another thing that is correct, and also a little inside fact, is that when you move abroad as a young Iranian, you have your family dry these herbs for you in a package, and you take it with you, and you hope that in the airport they will not stop you and think that it's a drug dealer taking some sort of drugs, but it's just herbs for my New Year dinner. But having said that, I haven't gone back home since September. I did not have the ingredients. But true, I should try looking up in Amazon for making this dish. Thank you, that's a great suggestion. And yeah, we have this meal together with the family, and then we go to 2 weeks of intense, I call intense visits and returning visits, which you can see on the next slide. These visits are called Eid Didani, which means visiting one another during the holidays. And right now, it's really the best thing in the world because you get to see people that you don't see for a whole year, and you catch up with them and you wish them a good New Year. And the best part is that as a kid, you become a millionaire in these visits because as long as you're a child, the older people in every household, they bring a book, whether it's a poetry book or a Quran, and they give you a little bit of money that they've left in that book as a sort of like a gift for a new year. So it's a period for kids of getting rich, for adults of going broke, and as you can see in the picture, of eating a lot, a lot. So normally before and after New Year, it's a period where we are very diet intensive, and you can see the sweets that are made or bought, and fruits and drinks, everything, tea. And the worst part is that, or the best part, depends, is that this visit happened twice. And it starts with the oldest member of the family. So you go to see your grandparents, and then aunts, and then on and on, and then they visit you back. So sometimes in 2 days you see people twice. So it's a very important point to like economize the information that you share. Like keep some of it for the first day, keep the rest for the second day, so you will not have awkward silence. But since they don't happen very frequently, you meet people that you don't meet in a year because they have a very busy life, or you travel a lot, or it just doesn't happen. They live in another cities. Um, it's a very cherished moment to see these people. And Tanel is asking if they use Doodle to get organized. I think we should introduce Doodle to each family. It would make life so much easier. I can't imagine how this used to be in the past when telephones or cell phones didn't exist. Because now you call grandma and grandma's home and you go there, but if grandma didn't have telephones, then you had to like show up, and you were at the same time under the pressure of having to visit family and to stay home. So it was a pretty challenging period. But what really big families do is they do a tour every day on each side of like on each section of the family. Let's say so you go visit your aunt the first day, everyone in the family goes to visit the aunt. Then you go to visit your uncle the next day, and it just carries on like this. And I have a comment here that says that Soroti pasture picture is torturing me. Yes, indeed, the sweets that are made and exchanged in this period are really cherished and lovely. And I tried making one of them here. It didn't turn out as I expected, but it was really the closest taste to home. But anyway, this period, like every other period, passes, and you're reaching now the end of your holidays, which we would call Sizdabedar, which is on the next slide. And okay, a good zoom for, for the picture. But yes, Sizdabedar is what we call Nature Day or the National Picnic Day. And it was actually yesterday. It coincides somehow with April Fool's Day, and there are lots of similarities because one of the most fun things that we do in Cisdaradar is just like April Fool's, you have a lie that you have to tell. And normally, the more natural the lie, the better it is. And the traditional things that you do is because Sizdah means 13 and Bedar means outside. So you go out, you get rid of the 13, which is the bad luck number that we have in our, let's say, culture, the superstition of the 13 being a bad luck. So in this picture, when you see a closer zoom, you will see these people camping, everyone at the same time on the side of a street. So this is not a park or a campsite. This is like the green side of a road inside the city. And part of me is really concerned for our natural resources because there are lots of campaigns on treating nature carefully, being more environment friendly when you celebrate. And this picture is in Isfahan, one of the most beautiful touristic and traditional cities. And it's basically uh, in normal times, in non-Sizlevadar days, this is just a natural site for grass and flowers to be embedded. But when you have 80 million people leaving their house for one day, you would really camp anywhere that you find interesting. I also have to mention that for this 2 week period, which is entirely a holiday, everything in the country is closed except basic necessities and banks. They have the first 5 days closed, by the way. You sometimes return back to your hometown on the last day, which is the 13th. So you have people on the roads, like on the side of the autostrada and on the highway, also camping and having their cars parked. So it's also not one of the safest holidays to do if you don't do it carefully. But it's very fun because when you're camping with your family, you cook a lot of grilled barbecue things to eat. You make a lot of card games and sport activities together. And it's fun. It's also a picnic, which everyone loves. And on this note, I'm going to introduce you a recipe that we have, which is a very healthy recipe. But before that, I'm going to answer the question, which is where are the bathrooms? So that's a very interesting question. I will respond to it with a personal experience. So my mom's side of the family, we have this spot that we really like. It's their spot, we call it. It's outside town, so we go to the suburban areas, and it's really a piece of abandoned land. And we always set a little camp there. And they actually set a camp toilet themselves that day every year. So they take their toilet with them because you have to be there from the morning to the afternoon. But when you go to parks, of course, there are the public toilets of the parks and so on. And Antonella asks, so you mean that in Iran, 20 million people make a collective picnic? Well, it depends on your definition of a collective picnic. I mean, technically, most of the people who believe in this tradition, or let's say they practice this tradition, they go out on that day. It really depends on how much let's say ability or how much of the means you have, because of course my mom's side of the family are very picnicky and camping people. They love camping and picnics. I and my mom personally, we're not really prepared. So we either go with them, or if we're supposed to, camp somewhere for an hour or two a day, we just do that so we can still come back home and have our meal inside and have the clean toilets inside as well. So everyone goes out, yes, but do we picnic together? In essence, not really. However, I have to add that with the ratio of people and space in this picture, you can see that you're probably, if you're probably camping in a tent, which is right beside the other person, you will probably at some point exchange some communication and dialogue with them. Sometimes they come together, they play games together, families meet like this. And there is an interesting fact behind this because Sizdaveter really like closes the loop. And in this state, what you do traditionally is that you have a little patch of grass with you that I showed, the sabze, or when you're in nature, you take two very thin threads of grass and you tie knots to them together. So either you do it in the grass that you grew yourself or you do it in nature. And when you tie that knot, usually young people, they wish that by the next year, they would get married. So it's a moment of, wishing yourself a happy family and a happy marriage for the upcoming year. And since everyone is out there in this period, sometimes I think maybe there would be moments where people would meet each other, an opportunity to just go around and see, okay, whom can I marry here? But it's like a little bit of a random thought that I have. There's a question by Gigi which says, somebody told me that there's also the belief that evil spirits can enter the house on the 13th of Faradin, which is the first month of the year. So you fool them by remaining outside the whole day. Yes, it's the whole superstition of the 13th behind this idea. So you're saying that 13 means, Sizda means 13 and Bedar means outside. So when you go out, the evil spirits or the bad, the let's say vibes and the bad negative feelings, they can't find you in your house. Because I mean, come on, if I enter this campsite and need to find a family member, it's actually going to be a challenge. So that's probably one of the reasons how they believe that this 13 evil makes people leave their houses. It could be a valid explanation indeed, but you're just doing this to avoid anything that is associated with negativity. Oh yeah, there's another question. My husband says that maybe the evil is a fun guy. Maybe, maybe. I think we've all escaped it for me, for my 26 years of life. I've really tried to escape it and I've never seen the evil, but maybe it is. You never know. And we have a comment which is COVID-19 lockdown could be a catastrophe. And this is the most valid question that I can have. And it was actually my own question. And with this question, we're going to the second part of my presentation today, which is what happens when you, as a very social culture, a person who's a very social herself, also belongs to a social culture, what happens when you have COVID-19. So if Elizabeth can move to our very beautiful COVID-19 slide, we can see how it is. But before that, I will give you a tiny recipe that I've made, and you can see it in the picture as well. This is what we eat during our Sizda Beda. And this is the recipe that I'm gonna teach you how to make. It's called Kohu Sekencebin, and it's made from two words. It's serke and engebin. So serke, we also had it on the hafsin itself. It's vinegar, and engebin means honey. It's the traditional Farsi word for honey. And you can drink it, or you can use it as a dip. And I thought it would be a nice idea to just introduce it because I think everyone now with the lockdown, you can just go to your kitchen cabinets and find most of the ingredients for this. So it's made of honey and water, and you boil it together. If you don't have honey, it's fine. You can use sugar. And once it starts to thicken, some 20, 15 minutes later, you add 2/3 of a cup white vinegar or apple cider vinegar. And then you let it stir for a little bit more. And if you like the taste of mint in general, you can put a little bit of mint and let it cool down. If you want to drink it, I recommend you dilute it with water because it tastes very strong. And as a dip, you can dilute it a little bit. And the traditional way of how you eat it, and this is there, it's very simple. You take a little bit of lettuce and you dip it here, and then you take a bite. And I can't tell you how nice it feels after you've won a game of volleyball against your cousin that you take a little bite of this very refreshing liquid, considering the fact that you have been outside for the whole day and you're still staying there. So you can always make this recipe at home. And I'm pretty sure Elisabetta will share the presentation with you. Also, it's a very nice thing to try in summer here when you get back home from a full day of 40 degrees of heat and humidity in Veneto. I've had the personal experience. But back to the question that we have about the COVID-19 lockdown and my Nowruz. The title of my presentation is Nowruz and COVID-19. So while we're on our COVID-19 slide and waiting, I'd like to open the floor here to a little bit of discussion in case anyone hasn't managed to ask questions about these traditions, if anything is vague, before we go to the rest of the presentation. And Livia is asking, would I like to share some nice memory of mine about the celebration? Yes, before we go to the saddest parts of the presentation, I will share a few good memories of my life in these periods. For Charshambasuri, yes, I have had wonderful memories. One of the most amazing ones was that when I used to live in an apartment complex, which was 2 blocks of 14 floors, we had a very big yard, and we had a Zoroastrian family there who took this celebration really seriously. So they would build 7 fires, and they were the real big type of fires that you should not have jumped over. So they would celebrate their 7 big fires, and we would just go to the yard and watch those fires. And when they were like dying down, and it was like near the end of the celebrations, I remember once I jumped over 7 fires, which were very tiny. I was quite young. I was like maybe 13 or 14 at that point, and they were very small fires. And I jumped over 7 fires. So I really thought, okay, my year is made, and it was fun. That's a very nice memory because we used to come out and dance together. And these are the things, these are parts about my culture that are really not shown on TV. So if you say a group of young Iranians with their families were dancing on this night in their yard or on the street, people are like, what? So yeah, this is a fun memory about Charshamba Street. About Sal Tahvil, I have really mixed feelings about this holiday because at the same time, I really love it. I love Eid Didani, the part you visit your family. But at the same time, I also sometimes feel overwhelmed because I'm always a person who is busy doing her thing, like studying, doing my work, keeping myself busy, and I don't see my family so big. I also don't have such a really big family, so most of my relatives are my mom's side of relatives. So I always go to see them, and it's a little bit. I think some of my Italian friends could relate. There's always someone in your family who asks really inappropriate questions, and you're like, I don't know how to answer this, and I don't feel like I have to answer this, but out of social pressure, I'm just gonna tell you something. And sometimes it makes me feel a little bit weird because the older people in your family keep wishing you to get married and to have children in the upcoming year. And I'm like, I still am studying. I'm still under a lot of other kinds of pressure. So yeah, that's a part which I have mixed feelings about. But having said that, at the same time, I am an only child and also an only grandchild. So for me, it's literally the definition of a child on Christmas Day. Every time we had a Didani, I would always get money. I was probably one of the richest members of my family by the time we finished these 14 days of holiday, and I'd always keep that money to buy something for myself, which I thought was interesting or useful. And yeah, I really had the investment mentality from childhood. And sometimes, well, you know, I have to admit I was also a little bit spoiled. So sometimes I would wake up and see like, oh yeah, someone came to visit while you were napping and they left you money. And I was like, oh nice. So they come to me to my house to visit me and they also leave me money. This is wonderful. We should do this more often. We should do this more than once a year. But yeah, as you grow up, of course, these aspects fade. And since that there, of course, there are lots of memories. There's always playing some sort of ball game and playing cards or being together with family. But this one really funny memory once happened as me grown up. We went out with a group of our family, like relatives, and the dish that they made. Since Davidar also has its traditional dishes, and the dish that they'd made, I was unfortunately allergic to one of the herbs that they put in one of the dishes. So I ended up not having an actual meal that day, and they really apologized because they didn't know. So I just had snacks and this lovely dip that I made with lots of vegetables. And then by the time we were coming back home, I was like really hungry. And not a single restaurant was open in the city. Not a single restaurant. So I was thinking like, if you really don't feel like cooking or if you really don't feel hungry, what do you do in this? If you really feel hungry and you can't cook, what do you do on this day? Nothing is open. All the restaurant owners go out. But this was a fun memory. So I had to come back home and have my mom cook something for me. I think I was about like 6 or 7 at that time. But this is just to show you how seriously people take this otherwise known superstitious holiday. But I think it's just a big part of our tradition that Antonella says that her kids make this kind of calculations. I don't want to say I was a really good kid, but I think this mentality really helps you plan later on in life about money because then you end up being a student like me abroad. So you really got to calculate your resources very well as a kid. And yeah, they plan years ahead. True, we all plan years ahead for what to do with our with the money that we get, which is called AD, by the way. So this was a little bit of more intimate sharing of my memories in life. But now I think we can pass to the coronavirus situation, which is something that I don't think any of us really wants to hear because we've been home now. For me, my smart working started in on the 25th of February, which was, by the way, a day after my birthday. So I've been inside with my colleagues at Alda for now almost more than a month and a half, and we're being bombarded by news, fake news, and also, you know, authorized news from reliable sources. You can't go out, you can't travel, you can't have your normal life back, you can't have your rhythm that pre-existed. You're not even authorized to hug people, to touch people, and smart working every day, staring at the screen for so many hours, and all the stuff that I'm not going to bore you because you're living it. Almost everyone now is, as far as I know, in smart working situations. Sometimes I had friends and colleagues because of my degree. I've been moving around a lot, and our last semester was in France before I got accepted to do my internship at Alda. So a lot of my friends think that I'm still in France. So when the confinement started in France, I received a couple of calls and messages from them. They're like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's been almost 3 weeks that I'm at home." And they're like, "Oh yeah, but the lockdown just started in France." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm in Italy." So this is a moment of reflection for me. As you can see, I've been reflecting a lot. My brain is on fire in this slide, while also being upset that how bad does it feel for you to have all this amazing 2 week period of holidays of meeting people, of spending time with your loved ones. And us Iranians as a culture, we're a very warm culture. We love hugging and kissing and embracing each other. Family members adore this kind of thing. They hug you so hard, sometimes you feel like you're about to die. And how does it how does it end that, yes, for me maybe it's a little bit easier now that I'm abroad and I really don't have access to all of my family or to all of these traditions to do specifically lighting up a fire and jumping over it. However, there are a lot of university student communities that do the same thing here. abroad. But having said all of this, I felt really bad for not being able to spend time with my family in Iran had I been there, because Iran also is having really bad numbers, and unfortunately, there is not so much transparency as to how bad the situation really is. And because there is not so much transparency and not so much of authoritative action taken, people are not aware of how bad the situation is. And they do all that I told you. They gather for all these holidays, they travel because it's their holiday, and they just keep transmitting the virus between themselves. And this really brought me to a moment of reflection. And this moment of reflection is on the next slide, where I thought, okay, what would I do if I was in Iran? And what should I do now that I'm here? Because Nowruz is a symbolism of all the good things that we love, of spending time with our loved ones, of doing fun things together, of human contact. And it's true that it's a tradition that we've had for thousands of years and I've had all my life. But at the same time, now I think it's the moment that we have to transform this tradition if we want to keep it. So I'm going to open the floor here to a little brainstorming, and to a point that Gigi also brought up. What do you do for Nowruz if you're locked up inside your house and you can't do any of the celebrations?
I guess you can do some of this online as we do with our spring aperitivo, where we have a lot of aperitivos online with friends. I guess that some of these meals and sharing, you can do it online. I guess this is how it's gonna look our Easter in a couple of in a week.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for this brilliant input. One of the reasons why I thought it's a nice moment to share this webinar is because unfortunately in Italy, we're staying in confinement until the end of Easter holidays, at least for now. And we are probably forced to celebrate Easter the same way. And I've had lots of friends saying aperitivo is turning into iperitivo. So we're still having our aperitivo online via Skype. Doa, my friend, says we can celebrate it at home and camp in the backyard. That is a very valid suggestion. Yes, if you have a backyard, you really have to enjoy it. What I did yesterday was I spent about half an hour on a balcony, hoping that the evil spirits, as Gigi said, will not be able to find me if I hide myself in the balcony. But just I was joking, but just to keep the tradition. We have a beautiful photo that Gigi shared of a half scene. Is that your half scene or a friend's? I'm just curious to know. Yeah, it's oh my god, so beautiful. You definitely have to tell us a little bit as to why or how you got so close with these intimate Iranian traditions. And speaking of a photo, my mom, for the very first time, my mom is technology, like she's not a really big technology geek. Like she uses it as much as she needs it, but especially since I've moved away. But she was sending me photos of half seen challenges. So people have shared their half seen photos that they've made at home without leaving the house with everything that they had. So 2 weeks of shopping canceled, out of the window, you can no longer shop. With whatever you have at home, you've put half seen up. And we did this as well with the Iranian community, some students. I unfortunately could not really do it because I'm a little bit short of time these days. But some of them actually painted the items of have seen on pieces of paper and they put it together in their student flats. Some of them put the things that they had and said, okay, we didn't have the rest. And those who managed to do it properly in Iran, they had to have seen photo challenges, just like Io Resto a Casa in Italy or Reste Chez Vous in France. They put have seen at home or the equivalent of this hashtag in Farsi. And they did the same thing as Dua suggested. They camped inside of the yard or on the balcony. And they ate the same things that we eat as usual. At least for the food perspective, there has not been so much of a problem, except for the foods that are open like you buy them open, let's say in a spice market. Those were avoided. And Tanana has a very valid point, and she says that she thinks that those who are not using technology feel really cut out. And I have to unfortunately say that this is very true, because I've lost my grandparents, but my mama's aunt, she's like my grandma, and I could only call her because she doesn't use phones, and my mom doesn't visit her because she feels like she might, transfer the virus to her. Even if she does her shopping, sometimes she just leaves it at the door so that there'll be no contact, and she disinfects everything. So having my mom go to her place and video chat with her or Skype with her for the new year was not really a safe option. So all I could do was to use my phone, my Skype, uh, to call landline and wish her a happy new year. That was a very sad moment, especially because when you're an immigrant, you don't know when you will see old people again. How long will it take between now and the next time I can actually get on an airplane and go back home to see my family? Now it's becoming more and more real, the reality of immigration. And sometimes you really can't do anything about it, which is sad, but it's part of life. However, having said this, if we have no more suggestions or discussions, we have come up with a solution for these people, of old people. What I thought would be interesting or could be interesting is to write them postcards. And these postcards, we can probably not send them out immediately because we can't go to the post office. It's not really good to go unless it's really necessary, but we can send them these postcards and say, we've been thinking about you during this part of the year. Or if we happen to visit them for helping, especially old people doing their shopping, we can always leave them a little bit of a small note or something like that, because the virus does not really live on paper for such a long time. And they can quarantine the piece of paper for some time and then read it later on. So this is what I really thought could be a nice idea. So as a kid, they would leave money in my house for me, and now as an adult, I will leave a small note, a piece of paper for them to wish them a new year. At least this is the least we can do. But on the next slide, I've put together a small reflection. It's not recommendations given by the World Health Organization, and it's not a guide, and I'm not a mental health coach or therapist, but these are my coping strategies with COVID-19, especially given that I've had a solid 2 weeks to think about how to survive this pandemic while at the same time being social and sociable and uh, mentally and physically healthy. So I'm going to share this guide also on this chat group with our colleagues. You can feel free to add to it. You can feel free to suggest things, because I think what really matters is that we keep this circulating to all people that might need it. And having said that, I'm not going to go into details because you're bombarded. I personally am bombarded by information as to how many times a day to do yoga, how to meditate, to do a Deepak Chopra meditation, practice mindfulness, do, I don't know, this exercise, that exercise, new form of aperitivo. We are facing a situation that was never there before. So it's normal that we're navigating it one day at a time. But that doesn't mean that we should stop ourselves from being open and aware of the effects that it might have on us. We should be, I think, kinder to ourselves and to accept the situation as it is. And as I put in my last slide, to transform traditions. And by traditions, I just don't mean 1,000 years of traditions, but just the traditions that we have, the traditional way of working from the office, the traditions of going out for a jog, let's say, or things that are so daily and so normal to us. And this is how we survive. And there's this famous philosopher saying, the only thing in the world that doesn't change is change itself. And I couldn't really agree more with this philosopher. I cannot remember whose quote it was exactly. If someone knows, please feel free to refresh my memory. But at the same time, if we don't cope, then we're just prone to death, unfortunately, or worse, confinement. And I like to think that this whole idea of Nowruz is about change. It's about how the world and the society and spring brings out change. So we have to also change and adapt to this new era, let's say, of our life. And Antonella left me a really sweet comment about my mom, who is very proud of my studies and how I'm coping. Indeed, it's been a very nice feeling to be able to, you know, to remain and remain in contact with her, because Iran has not had a very wonderful year this year either. We were all hoping for all the political misfortune that has happened so far to be, you know, washed away with a new beginning, with the new year, and didn't happen. But at least I'm grateful for being able to be in a safe place with the opportunity to be able to confine myself, to have a house, a roof above my head, and the technology of internet to continue my internship and my studies. And I think this is really all that matters, at least to her or to any mother, uh, to have your loved ones safe and happy, and to continue life, and to be, as Dua says, to be taking steps into a new era. So with this, I'm going to conclude my presentation. The survivors' resources for COVID-19, which is just my suggestion, and what I found to keep myself going, is on the chat box as well. Feel free to download it and use it, and we will take any questions that anyone has. I will invite Elizabeth to take this presentation onward to moderate questions, anything that points, sharings that you would like to have.
Thank you very much, Shadi. I guess on behalf of everyone, it was really interesting and interactive. I discovered a lot of new things, even though I thought I knew what Nowruz was, but actually I absolutely didn't. And personally, also your survivors guides is really gave me some great hints, like make a quarantine scrapbook. I'm not so good at drawing, but it's a very great idea, I think. Or the social dinner distance party is a great hint for my Saturdays. I will take into consideration. And as you said, you have been collecting questions and answering during the whole presentation, but okay, dinner time is approaching, but maybe a few minutes more if there are some last minute questions. And I was also struck by the many similarities with the Nowruz tradition and many other different traditions. Let's say we have in Europe, I speak for Italy now, like painting eggs or children going around for asking chocolates, or the picnics day with the live, with like April's Fool. That's really interesting.
Yes, we're all very connected by culture. And there's one question in the chat box by Gigi, which is, what did your father Hafiz say? Okay, I'm going to do a very quick window about that because it's important. You will see it in all other Iranian holidays showing up. We have a very famous poet called Hafiz. I think you might have heard of him. And he has a book called Divan Hafiz. And Iranians think that when you open this book and you read, well, you open it randomly, you fall on a page and you read that poetry, and there's an interpretation. So if you're about to take an important decision in life, some people consult this book to see, you know, if it gives you good feelings about it, or you always say, okay, let me see what Hafiz says about this. So it's a kind of a traditional thing to do. Sometimes you open this book at the beginning of a year to see how your year will be. I do not have the book here with me because it's really a thick book. There are online versions of it as well. But we do it, my family, we do it on Yalda night, which is another celebration, of course. It's the last night of autumn and the first night of winter, which I will bring to Alda at that season so we can have a little Yalda night together. But some people do it in Nowruz, and Gigi says he has a Rubayat Khayyam. Rubayat Khayyam is another poetry book. We're a very poetry obsessed culture, indeed. It's another similarity with Italy as well, with the Italian literature. Let's say with Dante, with Petrarch, and all the other poets that we have here. I am not seeing any other comments in the form of questions. I would like to thank each and every one of you. The presentation will also be shared with you, I think, via email, I think you can take whatever you need from the chat box here anyway until then, but I'm sure the presentation will get to you. And I invite you to have a very lovely dinner while still staying socially distant from people that we love. And thank you so much for all of you for being here today. It's made a world of difference, and I felt like I celebrated my Nowruz with everyone.
Thank you, Shadi. It was really an honor to have you here tonight for this presentation. I think we all go home, let's say back home, with a basic level of Persian language with all these words. But this is also a super useful side. So thank you again, and let's keep in touch and enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shadi. Thank you. I really enjoyed. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonella.
Okay. Good evening. Bye-bye. See
Bye-bye.
you. Cheers.